Independent Reformed Bible Church to give the opportunity for you to question the pastor. So, if anybody has any questions, I'll take them now.
Pastor, if someone finds themselves having been disqualified, is there a recovery to be had from that? Is there a way to be re-qualified? In the sense that Paul was talking about here as far as being disqualified in their ministry. Whether that's as a husband, father, parent, as a pastor, as in whatever role that might be, that they've been disqualified. Or are there nuances to that?
Well, you know I'm not a nuancey kind of guy. But that's not to say there aren't. Here's how I would respond to that, my short answer. As a pastor, I think there are things that are done as pastors that are disqualified. You can't be a pastor again. When it comes to family, I believe you can be requalified based on what's been done and whether or not the spouse is willing to give you that opportunity to be requalified. Quick example. For pastors, Ezekiel 34 for me is the passage. Ezekiel 34 talks about the shepherds that were, it's one of the most horrific, horrible passage where God attacks the pastors. He says, you're getting fat. And I know how you're getting fat. You're eating the sheep. The ones you're supposed to protect, you're eating them. They're not protected by the pastors at all. In fact, the pastor's their worst enemy, the shepherd. And I believe what that, I was reading it, I was thinking about talking about it during this sermon. I decided I didn't have enough time, kind of as a corollary, if you will. And I believe Ezekiel 34 says when a pastor becomes disqualified, he's out. He's done. And I think that's what we should teach, quite frankly. Because how many times does a church does a pastor do something he shouldn't do? Something he's disqualified for, and then the church goes through even worse times because, well, he's sorry, he's repented, let's take him back. And some people say no, some people say yes. We should teach the pastors that if there's certain things that they do, these things right here, especially the adultery problem, you can't come back as a pastor. You come back as a church member, you cannot come back as a pastor. If we would teach that, and I believe that's what Ezekiel 34 teaches, if we would teach that, we might have less problems. But if we would pass it, you know what, I can fall, I can catch me doing something, whatever. And I can cry, let's say, go through this. The first thing I do is cry, right? And then maybe I use the right language, and they can really use the language like overcome in a failure. Some of the ones I've heard as well, I didn't love my people enough. You didn't love your people enough. You really, really love them, but not enough. That's why you committed wrong. I mean, stuff like this. And that kind of stuff can just go on and on, Sid. And I believe cause more problems. And perhaps my understanding of Ezekiel 34 is wrong. I don't think it is. To me, it'd be a whole lot cleaner, a whole lot safer for everybody. No, you can't be a pastor anymore. Yeah, that'll get some hands raised. Yes?
Different question. It says in this verse, but I discipline my body and keep it under control. So my question is, how did Paul, or how should we discipline our body to keep away from those temptations of idolatry, testing the word, sexual immorality, and the last one that I can't remember. So how do we discipline our bodies to do that?
Sure. I think the biggie there is like discipline my body. It is certainly talking mostly about sexual immorality because that is what he mentions here directly, and that is also something that he mentioned earlier. And that's a theme that just keeps popping up again and again in the book of 1 Corinthians. So I think he's talking about that mostly. And I believe the answer there is what he later on says to Timothy and Titus, who are young men, when he says flee. And that is, we we ourselves know, as men, that the real way to flee sexual immorality is to flee anything that looks like it has any possibilities. We can't play with the possibilities. Playing with the possibilities plus time equals adultery. It's just that simple. So I would argue that Paul's main thing, he doesn't say it here, but I believe in other places it's flee. Other times he says fight. In this one, you must run fast. In this case, we do have context, right? Earlier when I said run, well, this is run away from temptation, fast, far. There's more to it, but I believe that's his main thing. Yes.
No, I have two, because comment on that.
Yes.
Paul, just coming off of the metaphor of disciplining himself for games, the Isthmian games. And so I think he's mixing metaphors. He's disciplining his body. Mostly he's disciplining himself, I think,
Right,
in that
right.
particular.
Yeah, but his body too. He says
His body.
Yeah.
Now my question that I had, what about John Mark when Paul sent him away? Was he disqualified from ministry when he came back?
Well, I don't think, we don't know that John Mark, it's a good question. John Mark, you remember Paul said, Al, with you, John Mark, we have serious work to do here. This is serious business. You might get yourself killed. I don't need you, John Mark. You failed me before, Al. And Barnabas said, no. And so you remember that they split up there in the book of Acts. Barnabas takes Mark, Paul takes Silas. As I recall, kind of worked out well for Barnabas. As I recall, I think that was just before they went to Philippi and got pounded by the Philippian jailer. I think. I'm not sure about that. So maybe you can check out my chronology there. In any case, that's sort of beside the point. We don't know that John Mark was disqualified for ministry, that he did any of these things. What we do know is that he was disqualified as far as Paul was concerned, because Paul just didn't want anybody who was going to fail when he needed it. So that's how I would respond to that. Is that? Yeah, I mean, it'd be different if it would have said he would have done one of these things. We don't know what John Mark did except sort of leave Paul high and dry.
So your point is that the disqualification for these things is permanent disqualification.
Yeah. Yeah, not everything. I mean, if you see me, my favorite thing, exceeding the speed limit, which I do often, quite frankly, and have no conscience about it whatsoever. Whatsoever. Well, yeah, Kyle can get me, I can pay me money, I can pay him money, but most of the time I'm going down the turnpike. If I'm doing the speed limit, I better get him the shoulder. In any case, if you see me exceeding the speed limit, that's definitely not disqualifying according to what we just read. Did I come to a complete stop at a stop sign? You know we're supposed to do that, right? Disqualified? How about backing out of the driveway? Did you know that? You know it's illegal to back out of the driveway, you know that? You know how I know that? Because when you go to take your driver's test, you get you get that catalog things about this thick, right? It's a big, kind of big letters and, pictures and whatnot, drawings. Let me ask you something. When they come at you, do you think they have their book is this thick? Do you think it might be a little thicker? Of possible violations. There's all kinds of stuff there. You don't even know what they are. Doesn't disqualify you from ministry or being a dad. And we need to obviously stick with the Bible. That's almost too easy. Yes?
Pastor, in verse 10 of chapter 10 of 1 Corinthians, neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured or complained. Can you develop that a little bit as distinguishing between, a lot of times, even in Christian churches, people that are contrary, but maybe speaking the truth, are viewed as complainers or murmurers, and perhaps I'm getting things mixed up here in terms of the context, but you can just develop that, please.
Sure. Moses had some opponents. Most of them were the complaining types, right? We're tired of manna. Where's the water? Thanks, Mo, for bringing us out into the desert to get us killed. Wasn't good enough to kill us in Egypt. Thanks for bringing us out here to get killed. But were those folks, were they his only opponents? You think of another opponent of Moses that was the closest he ever got to getting killed. Now, there were a couple times he was about to be stoned, but this particular time, he had an opponent who was about to get him killed. John knows who that was because he already said, who am I talking about? Who am I talking about?
Himself.
You're close. Who said his wife? Yeah. It was Mrs. Moses. Mrs. Moses almost got him killed. You might recall, back in the very beginning, he comes back from, Moses comes back with this commission from God. He finds this guy, I'm going to do what you tell me. Okay, you gave me Aaron. We go back and we'll lead the people out of Egypt. And he's all ready to go. And his wife, who was not even Israelite, meets him and says, you're a bloody husband because you have not circumcised your own children. And remember it says right there, God met him and God was going to kill him. God was going to kill Moses. Now, is Mrs. Moses a murderer at this point? Clearly not. Yeah. Moses might have thought so. But Moses actually responds correctly. And he gets the job done that he had to do. So opponents are not necessarily complainers and murmurers. It's all based on what they're complaining about, or what they're talking about, or what they're challenging about. Which is why, for example, Paul says to Timothy, don't even receive an accusation against an elder unless it's before witnesses. So we would now say, don't ever talk about the pastor. You know, don't ever talk about the elder. They're God's anointed. I've heard that one. They're anointed by God. Anything you say, and I think Paul's saying, an elder or pastor, they're capable of sinning just like anyone else. Certainly we saw that with Paul in his own ministry. So if anybody has an accusation, get the witnesses and listen to it. We say don't listen to it. That's what we say. Don't listen. Whatever you do, it's automatically murmuring complaint. It may or may not be. That's why you call the witnesses to find out if it is murmuring complaining, or if it's Mrs. Moses saying what needs to be said. But we stop too early. That's what we do. So if you oppose me, I'm the pastor, and anything you say against me is automatically murmuring. Not for Mrs. Moses. Definitely not. She saved his life. God would have killed Moses if she wouldn't have spoken up there.
Going out on the streets, getting the gospel, that kind of thing. I've had a lot of people, well, actually, no, I shouldn't say a lot. I've had a few people who've said, you know, hey, I'd love to come out with you and help you out, but they are maybe really into the word of faith movement, those kinds of things, like I'm going to speak power into this situation, that kind of stuff. Is that a disqualifier for them going out and spreading the gospel with me because it would be tempting God or tempting Christ? Because oftentimes it's like they'll say things and it's like, I don't know, this doesn't seem doctrinally solid. You're talking about personal revelation and like my words of power and that kind of stuff, and it's just, is that a disqualifier? Is that something I should be concerned about? Is that something that I should say, no thanks? Like, what is the appropriate response as someone who is approached by another believer who says, yeah, it's all about Christ, but then does these things regularly?
I have still not figured this whole thing out. In my experience, I've run into some of these folks. Okay, I'll give you an example. Give you this example. Has anybody seen Dave Wilkerson's book that was written in the, I think, early 90s, called Set the Trumpet to Thy Mouth. I'll read that, okay. In that book, Dave Wilkerson, I wrote him a long letter about it and didn't hear anything back. He's dead now. In that book, he wrote, and you'll remember, Tom, what he wrote. The missiles are coming over from Russia. And he had all these real specific predictions about what was going to happen. He was translating certain verses to say that since the Arctic ice is floating, whereas Antarctica at the south it's not, it's on land, but in the north, he had these verses saying that the submarines are coming underneath. I mean, the judgment was coming down, and it didn't come down. Anything what he said, nothing. And if you ever get a chance to read the book, it's a pretty good little primer in blood moonology, if you will. By the way, anyone knows the blood moons are over, we're still here? People do more damage. I say just be quiet. Shut up. Please. Anyway, what I'm trying to make is we have the Bible. The Bible tells us an awful lot. I just question how many words of faith we really need from people who are speaking as if the Holy Spirit is speaking through them. When we already have 66 books, which most of us know precious little about. You got a word from God? Well, Dave Wilkerson had, there's been so many words from God that didn't happen. They always have an excuse. I remember Wilkerson's excuse was. Dave Wilkerson was a very courageous man, if you know much about him. He did a lot of good things, I believe. A lot of good things. But he really failed here. And you know what his reason was? That we didn't get the judgment that he said we were going to get? He said during operation, the first one under Bush 41, Desert Storm, there's so many operations we've done, bomb, whatever. I can't remember them all. I think it was Desert Storm or whatever it was. He said, well, there was a revival among the U.S. service personnel during Desert Storm, so that's why it didn't happen. So there's only a get out of jail free card somewhere, even with the Word of Faith people. Well, if your get out of jail free card is so simple, it's that easy, then why should I even listen to your original pronouncement? And that's part of the problem. I don't want to take all these people, throw them in the bus as sincere people, and I get that. But how about if we study the real Word of God before we start grabbing everything else from all over the place and pretending that that's a competitor? It's dangerous. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question about somebody maybe is in adultery or in sexual sin, and if they haven't repented before they die, are they going to get there? Revelation 21:8 says, but the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone.
So your question is unrepentant.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's how I will respond to that, and you'll probably hear me say this again. I know I've said it before. We have this idea that this happened recently with a cousin of mine. Actually, he's my cousin's son. Give you the quick story. He kind of stalked our family, an atheist. You guys know who I'm talking about, right? And we talk about different stuff. Then he'd get on, go on the Facebook thread and say, "Hey, your God hates people." And I mean, he was a flaming, professing atheist, right? When he died, his dad got on there and said, "Well, he made a decision for Christ when he was young, so I'm sure he's in heaven now." Here's how I respond to that. I don't know what happened necessarily. We're told that God looks on the heart when somebody makes a profession or whatever. But I do know this. If you're acting like an unbeliever, and unbelievers are unrepentant, that's what makes them an unbeliever, then I can only treat you as an unbeliever. It doesn't matter if you were a church member before. That's meaningless to me. You preach. And I think that's what Paul's message is today. Paul's acting like he's still trying to make the team. That's what you have to love about Paul, right? It's like he's still preaching. He's still trying to please God with everything that he says and does. Unrepentant people aren't like that. I sure can personally, can I offer them any kind of assurance? None whatsoever. I don't know what's going on inside, but as far as I'm concerned, the way I treat them, can't. I'm unable to. And I believe I have Paul's testimony to do so. We have time for one more. Kids, you've been good. Been great. All right, thank you again for your kind attention.